Golden blood. You think your blood type is just AB, AB, or O. There are actually dozens of antigens layered on top of that, and one of them is so rare it has a nickname most doctors will never use in their entire career. It's called Rh null, golden blood. People who have it are missing every single Rh antigen, not just the positive or negative part everyone talks about. Around 50 people on the planet are confirmed to have it. 50. Here's why the nickname fits. Golden blood is the universal donor's universal donor. It can go into almost anyone with a rare blood type, which makes it priceless to medicine. Now here's the part that flips your stomach. The same thing that makes their blood so valuable makes their own life a tightrope. If a golden blood person needs a transfusion, there are almost no matches on Earth. They're walking around with the rarest, most life-saving blood there is, and they're the ones who can barely be saved. HIV immunity, CR5. HIV has killed tens of millions of people, and a small group of humans are just immune to it. Not lucky, not careful, immune. It comes down to a gene called CCR5. HIV breaks into your cells through a specific doorway on the surface, and CCR5 is that door. Some people inherited a version called Delta 32, where the door is basically bricked over. The virus shows up, knocks, and finds no way in. You need 2 copies to get the full effect, one from each parent, and it shows up mostly in people of Northern European descent. Why there? The leading theory is that an ancient plague swept through Europe and quietly selected for it centuries ago. Here's the wild part. We didn't just study this gene, we weaponized it. The only people ever considered functionally cured of HIV got bone marrow from donors with Delta 32. A typo in your DNA, passed down from people who survived something medieval, became one of the only real defenses against a modern killer. Supertasters. Some people genuinely live in a more intense flavor world than you do. They're called supertasters, and it's not a personality they invented to sound interesting at dinner. They're born with more taste buds packed onto the tongue, driven largely by a gene that controls how strongly you detect bitterness. Crowd the tongue with more sensors, and everything gets louder. Bitter goes nuclear, sweet gets sweeter. Coffee, beer, dark chocolate, broccoli, all of it hits harder. Sounds like a gift. It mostly isn't. Supertasters are often the picky eaters everyone rolls their eyes at, the ones who can't stand vegetables because to them, those vegetables are genuinely chemically unbearable. Here's the twist nobody expects. That picky kid getting nagged at the table isn't being dramatic. They're tasting a bitterness you physically cannot detect. The adult version tends to eat fewer vegetables, drink less, and sometimes stay leaner. The fussy eater you judged your whole life might just have a tongue running at a higher resolution than yours. Lactase persistence. Here's a fact that flips what you assume is normal. Drinking milk as an adult isn't the default setting for humans. It's the mutation. Almost every mammal switches off the enzyme that digests milk sugar after weaning, because why keep it running once you're off your mother? Most humans were built the same way. Then, a few populations evolved lactase persistence, the ability to keep digesting milk for life, and they spread it fast. It happened where people kept cattle, sheep, and goats. Milk was a survival cheat code in those regions, so the gene to handle it got selected for hard over just a few thousand years. So flip it around. If you can chug a glass of milk without consequences, you're not the normal one. You're the genetic outlier. Most adults on Earth are lactose intolerant. And they're not broken. They're the original design. You're the edit that's stuck. No body odor, ABCC 11. Some people don't need deodorant, not because they're clean freaks, because their genes turn the smell off entirely. There's a gene called ABCC11, and one version of it controls whether your armpits produce the compounds that bacteria feast on to create body odor. Get the right variant from both parents, and there's almost nothing there to feed on. No buildup, no smell. Deodorant becomes a product you'll never actually need. There's a tell, too. The same gene decides whether your earwax is wet or dry. Dry, flaky earwax is the giveaway sign you probably won this particular lottery. Here's the part that's almost funny. This variant is incredibly common across East Asia and rare in Europe, which means a huge chunk of the deodorant industry is built on selling a fix to people whose genes already solved the problem. Millions of people walk into a store, buy a stick of deodorant out of pure habit, and put it on armpits that were never going to betray them. The athlete gene, ACTN3. We love to believe elite athletes are just built different. Turns out, in one very specific way, some of them literally are. It comes down to a gene called ACTN3. ACTN3 builds a protein inside your fast-twitch muscle fibers, the ones responsible for explosive, powerful movement. Sprinting, jumping, lifting heavy. People with the working version have the hardware for raw power baked in, but a big slice of the population carries a broken copy. Their fast-twitch fibers don't get that protein. They're nudged, quietly, toward endurance instead of explosiveness. Here's the reality check, though. Nearly every elite power athlete on Earth has the functional version. Almost none of them have two broken copies. That sounds like destiny until you see the catch. Plenty of people with the perfect sprinter's gene have never run anywhere in their lives. The gene hands you the engine. It does absolutely nothing about whether you ever turn the key. Hyperthymesia. Try to remember what you ate for lunch 3 Tuesdays ago. You can't. A handful of people on Earth can tell you exactly, down to the weather and what they were wearing. It's called hyperthymesia, highly superior autobiographical memory. These people can recall almost every single day of their lives in vivid, dated detail. Give them a random date and they'll walk you through it like reading a diary they never wrote. It sounds like the ultimate superpower. It comes with a quiet curse. They can't forget. The worst day of your life fades for you, softening at the edges with time. For them, it stays in full color, forever, available on command whether they want it or not. Here's the part that lingers. We treat forgetting like a flaw, a glitch in the system. But forgetting might be mercy. The people who remember everything are also the people who can never fully let anything go. Their best memories never fade. Neither do the ones they'd give anything to lose. The photic sneeze reflex. Ever walk out of a dark room into bright sunlight and immediately sneeze? Most people will swear that's just random. It isn't. It's written in your DNA. It's called the photic sneeze reflex, and around a quarter of people have it. Sudden bright light hits your eyes, and instead of just constricting your pupils, your nervous system accidentally fires off a sneeze. Scientists gave it the perfect backronym, ACHOO. The best guess for why is a wiring mix-up. The nerve handling your pupils sits right next to the nerve handling your nose, and the bright light signal basically leaks across the wires. Here's the part that makes it more than a party trick. This reflex runs in families, passed straight down like eye color. It also means fighter pilots and drivers can sneeze uncontrollably the second they hit harsh light at the worst possible moment. A harmless quirk on the couch becomes a genuine hazard at 200 miles an hour. Heterochromia. 2 different colored eyes, one blue, one brown, on the same face. You've seen it on a celebrity or a husky and assumed it was just a cool fluke. It's a real genetic trait, and it's rarer than you think. It's called heterochromia, and it comes down to melanin, the pigment that colors your eyes. Either one eye got a different dose than the other, or the genes controlling pigment distribution didn't play it straight. The result is 2 eyes that never agreed on a color. Most of the time, it's completely harmless and present from birth. You're just built that way. Here's the part worth knowing, though. Heterochromia can also show up later in life, and when it does, it isn't always cosmetic. A sudden change in eye color in adulthood can signal injury, certain syndromes, or disease quietly announcing itself. So the same trait that looks like a gift on a model can, in another body, be the first visible sign something underneath has changed. Cilantro tastes like soap. OR6A2. Some people taste fresh cilantro and love it. Others bite into it and recoil like they just chewed a bar of soap. They're not being dramatic, they're tasting something you literally can't. It comes down to a gene cluster including one called OR6A2, which shapes a set of your smell receptors. Cilantro contains certain aldehyde compounds, the same family of molecules found in soaps and lotions. If you carry the variant, your receptors lock onto those compounds and scream, soap. So this isn't a preference, it's perception. 2 people eat the exact same leaf and have completely different sensory experiences, decided before either of them was born. Here's the part that ends the argument forever. Every time someone insists cilantro haters are just fussy, they're wrong on a molecular level. The hater's brain is receiving a genuinely different signal than the lover's. Nobody is faking it. Half the table is eating a herb. The other half is eating dish soap, and their DNA made the call. The longevity gene FOXO3. Some people seem to ignore the rules of aging. They smoke, they drink, they coast past 90 while everyone around them folds. Annoying, yes. But for a few of them, it might genuinely be in the genes. There's a gene called FOXO3, and certain variants of it show up again and again in people who live to extreme old age. It's tied to how cells handle stress, repair damage, and clean up the wreckage that builds up over a lifetime. Carry the lucky version, and your cells are quietly running better maintenance than everyone else's. Studies of people who reach 100 find these FOXO3 variants way more often than chance should allow. Here's the part that stings a little. You can do everything right, the diet, the sleep, the gym, and still lose to someone who does everything wrong but won this one specific genetic raffle. Lifestyle moves the needle, sure, but some people were handed a body that's just harder to kill, and they didn't do a single thing to earn it. Double eyelashes, FOXC2. A full extra row of eyelashes sounds like a beauty influencer's dream. It's an actual genetic trait, and the story behind it is darker than the look suggests. It's called dysdichiasis, driven by mutations in a gene called FOXC2. Instead of one row of lashes, a second row grows from glands inside the eyelid that were never meant to sprout hair at all. From a distance, it can look strikingly beautiful. Elizabeth Taylor reportedly had it. Here's the catch nobody puts on the glamour shot. Those extra lashes grow in the wrong place, so they often scrape against the eye itself, causing irritation, pain, and damage over time. Beautiful from across the room. Miserable up close. And the gene doesn't stop at your eyes. FOXC2 is also linked to problems with the lymphatic system and the veins. So the same mutation behind those dramatic lashes can quietly carry other issues with it. The trait everyone would screenshot and envy is, for the person who has it, frequently a problem they'd happily trade away. Synesthesia. Imagine hearing a song and seeing colors float in front of you, or reading the number 7 and knowing instantly that it's green. For some people, that's not imagination. That's just Tuesday. It's called synesthesia, where the senses crosswire and trigger each other. Letters have colors, sounds have shapes. Some people taste words. The brain's sensory channels, normally kept in separate lanes, start bleeding into one another. It runs in families and tends to be consistent for life. If the letter A is red for you at 6, it's still red at 60. Here's the part that reframes it. We treat synesthesia like a glitch, a brain wired slightly wrong, but it shows up far more often in artists, writers, and musicians than in the general population. So the wrong wiring is also the wiring behind a strange amount of human creativity. The people experiencing reality in a way that sounds broken are often the ones who turn around and make the things the rest of us can only stare at. Red hair and pain resistance, MC1R. Redheads are rare, under 2% of the world. But the gene behind that hair is doing something far stranger than just coloring it. It's quietly rewriting how their entire body handles pain. It comes down to MC1R, the gene responsible for red hair and pale skin. The same variant also messes with how the brain processes pain signals. Redheads tend to be more resistant to certain types of pain, while being weirdly more sensitive to others, like cold. Here's where it gets practical and a little alarming. Studies have found redheads often need more anesthetic to be properly knocked out for surgery. Same dose that works on everyone else can leave them undermedicated. So sit with that. There are people walking around whose hair color is a visible warning label for their anesthesiologist. One mutation decides the shade on their head, how much pain they can take, and how much medicine it takes to keep them from waking up mid-operation. All written into the same tiny stretch of code. Malaria resistance, sickle cell trait. Here's one of the cruelest deals evolution ever made. The same gene that can cause a devastating disease also protects millions of people from one of history's biggest killers. It's the sickle cell gene. Inherit 2 copies and you get sickle cell disease, where red blood cells warp into stiff crescents that clog vessels and cause agony. But inherit just 1 copy, and something strange happens. You're mostly fine and you become dramatically more resistant to malaria. That's why the trait is so common in regions where malaria has hammered humans for thousands of years. The gene that kills with two copies saves lives with one, so the population kept it. Here's the brutal logic underneath it. Evolution doesn't care about your comfort or even your survival as an individual. It kept this gene around because, on the whole, more people lived than died from the trade. Entire populations carry a deadly mutation right now, not despite the danger, but because the danger of the alternative was worse.